This is a tutorial of the game Ark Nova as played on Board Game Arena. Ark Nova is a fairly involved game, so I'm not going to be able to cover every single rule, especially when it comes to the various cards and their powers. However, I will at least go through all of the main rules and the structures of turns and rules about placing things on your board and taking actions, show some examples of cards and what they do, of actions and what they do. And then I'm going to have a section that will cover how Board Game Arena integrates this and gives you some options, makes things easier to see around the board, and with the various settings that you can set as part of your interface. Ark Nova is about building a zoo. This is the map of your zoo, and you could have other maps that you start out with. This is the starting map. It gives you a little bit of a head start here with one exhibit put already. However, other maps sometimes will give you bonus powers. But you are placing exhibits on the map, then you are filling them with animals, which are played with cards. You have various blue cards that give you ongoing powers, immediate benefits, or endgame scoring. And you have these actions up here that you can take to help you, again, do more things, grow your zoo more quickly, more efficiently, gain income, and also play on these goal cards, with 3 of which have been randomly put out here, but you can also add your own as the game goes on. The score consists of 2 different tracks. There's an appeal track, which is these tickets, and these numbers are going this way. So that you start at the back of the track and move up to 113. And the conservation track, which are these green markers, which go in larger chunks and start down here at -12 and go all the way up to 99. As soon as somebody crosses, there are 2 markers, somewhere in the middle most likely, where their green marker and their appeal track cross over each other. That triggers the end of the game. Everybody else gets 1 turn. And then, at least the way BGA calculates it, you take the total score of the appeal track and the conservation track, and that is your final score. Highest final score is the winner. On your turn, you are picking 1 of 5 actions to do. And we'll go through each of these, but that's all you are doing. You are just picking 1 of these 5 actions. Now, those could trigger other actions and combo with other things, but you are just picking 1 of these 5 actions. Now, they're in these various places, 1 through 5, at first randomly, but whenever you select an action, so let's say I selected this action at position 4, it has a power of 4, which lets you do certain things. Whenever you see that X in these cards, that means that power that it happens to be on. You play that card, you do that action, and then you slide that card to the end, and everything else moves up. It means everything else gains power every time you use an action that is not that action. So this encourages you to use different actions each turn, because obviously the one that's in this spot is the most powerful, and when you use it, it goes all the way to the end, and everything scoots up, and something else becomes the most powerful. But maybe you don't want to use that one, so you use the 4, or you really have to use this, so you're willing to take it at a lower power. You even have little X tokens here that you can gather that will let you up the power if you need to. These 5 actions let you draw cards, place animals, place exhibits, place these blue cards, or take some worker placement-ish actions over here. So let's go through them 1 at a time. And then we'll go into detail on some of the limitations around animals and placement. The animals card, you get to play a certain number of cards from your hand. 0 if it's in level 1, but 1 if it's 2 through 4, and 2 up to 2 animals if it's level 5. Note that there's this other purple version of the card that's showing up. There are different opportunities during the game to flip that card over, to upgrade it to level 2, which gives you better benefits and unlocks certain things that you're able to do. For instance, sometimes when you see these purple things and this purple icon here, you can't do those things until you have upgraded the associated card. Anyway, this lets you play that number of animal cards from your hand onto exhibits that exist from the board. The association task lets you take one of these actions up here. Currently you have one worker that's sitting right over here that you can place on one of these actions. It doesn't matter if somebody else is there, but if you are already there, and if you want to take that action again before those are cleared out, you have to pay 2. So you have ways of getting up to 4 of these workers, but right now you just start with 1 and you pick one of these actions according to the strength. Currently it's just the blue actions you would have. So if I took it at a 2, this 2 action would be the only one I could take, but if I had a 5, I could take any of these 4 actions with my worker. That is the association task. We'll get into details on that a bit later. Cards lets you draw cards. Basically, depending on how much power it has, depends on how much drawing you can do. If you are at a power of 3, like you're here now, you can draw 2 cards, then you have to discard 1 from your hand. It doesn't have to be one of the ones you draw, it just has to be something from your hand you have to discard. All the way up to 5, which lets you draw 3 and discard 1 of those cards. Or instead of doing the draw and discard, you can do a snap action, which is that little icon, that little folder icon, which lets you just take any one of these 6 cards up here in the market. It doesn't matter where you are along this track, which does matter sometimes, but when you snap, you just take one what you want, everything slides over and it refills. This also has the break symbol in it. So the break is kind of a way to track rounds. We'll talk about what happens at the end of each round, but anytime there's a break and a number, like here it's break 2, but this one you can say break and then whatever the power is at, and it increases that until it hits 12, and then there's a coffee break and a bunch of things happen to reset the board. You get your workers back and a few other things. Building lets you build new buildings on your zoo. We'll talk about some of the restrictions of what you have available, but you just place the different hexes. These are the different options for buildings that you have, either a 1, a 2, a 3, 4, or 5 size. There's these special petting zoos, pavilions, and kiosks. They are always this shape. There are a couple special buildings you have to have an upgraded build card for. But those are the options you have. You can rotate them. You can't flip them, but you can rotate them and fit them along your board. That's the build action. Again, you can build up to size X. Only one building when it's just a level 1 card, and you pay 2 money per space that it is. So if I have this at 4, if I built a 4-space building, then it would cost me 8. I don't have to spend 4. I could just do a 3 building, and it would only cost me 6. And then finally, the sponsors. This is playing blue cards. I don't have any in my hand, but you can see a couple up here. Blue cards give you yellow. The yellow actions are something that happen immediately. If there's any blue action, you can see here listed in the bullet on the side. Those are ongoing actions that happen. So in this case, anytime anybody else plays a bear, you get some appeal, which is part of that score track. And then anytime there's a brown ability, that's something at the end of the game that you can get for meeting certain conditions. And they will have combinations of those just depending on the blue cards. So the standard sponsors action, you can play the blue cards from your hand or do a break and get some money. And the upgraded one, you can actually play them directly from here, and there's a few other benefits. All right, so that's the very basic overview. Those are the 5 things you can do, and then every time you do one, it loses all of its power, goes to the end, and everything slides up and gains a power. Let's talk a little bit about them in more detail, starting with the build. So I talked about the different buildings that you can place on your board. When they're placed, they are placed like this one is, empty. When you place one, you have to place it touching another board. If your board doesn't start with any, you have to start with touching on the edge, but then it always has to touch something else. In this case, you're only building one, but in some cases you can build more than one when this is upgraded. And you can always build these pavilions or kiosks. The pavilions, they simply give you an appeal. Just if you need to fill in a spot, that's great, because filling in the entire map actually gets you 7 appeal at the end too. So sometimes you just want to fill in an empty spot. The kiosks can get you income. So the way the kiosk works is every unique building that is occupied. This one isn't occupied, so this kiosk currently doesn't give you anything. But if it had this one was filled, and maybe it had a pavilion next to it, and then another one next to it that was filled with an animal, every time you run a break action, you get income of 1 per building that kiosk touches that is filled. So you get a few kiosks around, and they have to be, I believe, 3 spaces apart. They have to have at least 2 hexes between each one. You can't stick them right next to each other. But you have them touching 2 or 3 buildings, and you have 3 or 4 of them. That's a nice little income that you can get. This hand symbol, anytime you see that hand symbol, that is stuff that you get every time the break happens. And you'll probably go through 5 to 10 breaks during the game, depending on how quickly that break action is taken. Whenever you play something and it covers one of these yellow hexagons, you gain that reward. In this case, 5 money. In this case, an X token, which lets you increase your power. This one lets you draw a card. This one gets you 2 on the reputation track, which we'll talk about. This one unlocks a worker, and so forth. These 2 spots are not available until you upgrade your build card. And you cannot build these 2 special buildings unless you upgrade your build card. All right, that is the build action. Now we want to, since we've built these things, we want to put animals in them. That is the animals action. So the animals are always played as cards. When you play the animal, it goes over here into the card, and it fills up a building in some way. There are requirements for placing animals, and BGA has a nice interface for this, where if you see on the left-hand side up here, it will show you all of the various requirements that are needed and whether you have them or not. So in this case, there's 4 different requirements, and I have 3 of them. So I will, I'm almost to the point where I can put this hippopotamus somewhere. So let's talk about some of those requirements. So the brown hexagon in the top left corner is the minimum space for that hippopotamus. So it needs to be at least 2 wide. This is 3, and this one requires a 2. So I could put the 2 there, but I couldn't put a 5 there. You can see that X there. I don't have to fill it with 3. I can put anything under that, but it requires at least 2. There's a little water symbol next to it, and some of them have a rock symbol as well. Like this one up here has a rock symbol. If it's a water symbol, then the enclosure has to be next to a water tile. And these water and rock tiles you cannot build on top of. If it has a rock symbol, it has to be next to a rock. So this one is next to both, which is nice. So I can put any type that has that requirement in there. The square next to it, that money symbol, means that's how much it costs to place that animal. And then any type of red stripe underneath it is an additional condition. So in this case, it requires at least 1 partnership token of the continent that matches, in this case, Africa. And those partnership tokens come over here. This one, in order to place it, it requires an upgraded animal card. Up here, this one requires at least 1 science token, which you get over here, or tag, those microscope tags. This one, those are the blue cards, but it's the same idea where it has requirements under it. This one, if your appeal is less than, you have to have an appeal less than 25. But some of them don't have any requirements, like none of these do. There are those tags across the top. Those are tags that you get when you play it. So if there's a tag on the side of it, like that microscope, those are requirements. You don't get those when you play it. You have to have those in order to play this. But the ones at the top you will get, and those tags are needed for lots of different things, like these goals over here or other cards they give you points for, and there's all kinds of reasons you have those tags. And then each card, when you play it, has some sort of benefit that you get for playing it, not just the requirements or the tags. So at the bottom right, you see that 6 with the tickets. That's appeal points. In this case, when I play the hippopotamus, my appeal track goes up 6. You could also get conservation points here. Those conservation points are a lot harder to get, by the way, because that's why the track makes you go up more in more chunks. But in this case, it's a pretty expensive animal, right? It's an elephant. You got to make a lot of room. 5 enclosure next to water, needs 33, an upgraded animal card, but it gets you 8 appeal and 1 conservation points. And then there's some sort of action that you get. This one here, when you play it, you get to play a new action, a new sponsor's action, in addition to this playing the animals. This one, you get some of the final scoring cards, which we'll talk about in a bit. This one, you get to draw some cards and keep a few of them. So each one has all kinds of different benefits that you get immediately when you play that animal. I'm not going to go through all of them. There are hundreds of cards in the deck, over 100 animals in the deck. You will just kind of have to learn what they do as you see what they do. Sometimes they even give you multiple things. There are some animals that go into special places. For instance, these two here require a petting zoo. The petting zoo is kind of a special building. It's a size 3 building, so you have to have at least 3 power to build it. But the nice thing is, instead of just the animal taking the entire enclosure, those different squares in there can take multiple animals, and it'll say how many it takes. In this case, in these two cases, it just takes 1, but in some cases, it could take more than 1 in an enclosure spot. So this one here requires the petting zoo to place in it, and you can place it in the petting zoo, and it just puts a cube on top of the petting zoo after you've built it. This one's a little different. So this one has the 1 next to it, so you could put it in a size 1 enclosure, or you could put it in the reptile house here, which holds up to 5. And in fact, if you put it in the reptile house, it doesn't cost any room. It just goes in there for free. Some of them, the more advanced one, or the larger ones, may take 2 or 3 spots in there, or some will just take 1. Just depends. But you have 5 spots that you can fill with the reptile house, and then there's the large bird aviary, which is also 5 spots. And that's what they look like, and you have to fit them in your map as well. But you can only build those if you have build level 2. That is basically it for playing animals. Again, each one does something different, but they all have requirements, either size, cost, and maybe extra requirements. They all give you tags. Most of them give you some sort of bonus on your tracks, and then some sort of bonus action that you can take, some benefit that it gives you when you play it. All right, let's do the cards first. This is fairly straightforward. We already talked about drawing and snapping, but what I do want to talk about is the reputation track. So whenever you see these hats here, these little graduation caps, that is you moving up the reputation track. And what you get you get some benefits as you move along, and you can't move a certain spot until you upgrade that card action to the side 2. But the other thing it does is it gives you access to more cards along the way. And so, for instance, if you upgrade this, it says you can draw cards from within your reputation range. Or if you use one of these, you can take a card from your reputation range. That means however far along this track is, any card above it or to the left you are able to take. So in the first case, the only one you'd be able to take would be this one. But as you get farther along, if you were up here, you could pick any one of these 4 to take as one of those draw cards actions or the upgraded cards action. So these will cycle through. Anytime someone is picked, everything shifts down and new ones are drawn. At the end, at each break, these 2 at the end are removed and everything slides down. You get 2 more. Pretty basic cards. Moves the break timing and lets you draw or snap. And again, the snap is not restricted by the reputation. It lets you pick any one of the 6 cards. But that's the only thing you do. You only draw that 1 card. But if there's one up here that you really need, that's a good thing to do. All right, the sponsor cards. These are ones that you'll play from your hand, or if it's upgraded, you can actually play them directly from here if they're within your reputation range by playing the upgraded sponsor card. And these, like I said, give you bonuses, either immediate bonuses, like this polar bear exhibit actually gives you a new tile that you place in your exhibit, a level 4 tile. And And then there are ongoing bonuses. In this case, anytime anybody ever plays a bear, including yourself, you get 2 appeal. And then at endgame, you get conservation points. If you have 3 to 5 bear icons, you get 1. If you have 6 or more, you get 2. So if you really want to go for bears, this might be a way to do it. But you got to get a lot of this game is adapting to what shows up. You know, you could say, "Oh, I'm going to go for bears this time," and you don't see many bear cards during the game because there's so many different cards. You have to be adaptable to those situations. That's what the basic blue cards are. They give you they do have a requirement of power. So you see the 4 and the 5 up here. You have to have that sponsor card of at least that power to play those cards. And some of them have extra conditions, like this one. You can't play unless you have your sponsors flipped over. And then they give you either immediate, ongoing, or endgame bonuses, and sometimes all 3, or a combination. Finally, the association task. And this one is the most complex because it consists of up to 5 other actions that you take. So let's quickly go through these actions. Some of them are very easy. This one here just moves you 2 up the reputation track. These 2, 3 and 4, give you either partnerships or universities that you place here on your board. You start at the bottom and place them, and then you gain benefits as you go up and place them as well. The partnership ones can be requirements. For example, this hippopotamus requires the Africa partnership if you want to play it, but it also gives you discounts on any cards that have that continent. So when I play that Africa one, it will give me a discount of 3. So instead of 15, this will only cost me 12. In this case, if I have the Asia one, it'll actually discount it by 6 because it has 2 Asia tags up there. And this one, if you have the Europe partnership, would discount it. So that's one way to have the benefit for those partnership tags. You can only have one of each color. And when you take one, it will be unavailable until the break happens and it refills it. Same with these universities. When you take one, it will not become unavailable until the break happens. The universities are a similar thing. You place them starting from 1 and go up. And they give you certain benefits either up on that reputation track. They give you symbols, these microscope symbols. Or this one lets you, during the break, typically you have to discard down to 3 cards, but this one lets you discard it down to 5 cards instead. So it gives you a little bit extra breathing room in between those breaks. Finally, the 5 action lets you play on one of these green cards. Or if you have a green card in your hand, you can play that up here and place and contribute to it. It's a conservation project that gives you conservation points typically. And when you do that, you take one of your cubes from over on this side and you place it on the whatever requirement that you fulfill. You're just looking for icons. So if I was able to have 4 Africa icons, and those could come from partnership tokens, they could come from animals, they could even sometimes come from sponsorship cards if needed. If I had 4 of them, I could place a cube on this 4 spot. Nobody else could place on that 4 spot, but if they had 2 or 5, then you could as well. And you would get 3 conservation points. You also once you place on one of these projects, you can't commit another to it. So you can't place on the 4, get 1 more Africa, and place on the 5 to get it again. So sometimes you want to just get on there as quickly as possible. Sometimes you want to save up so you can get more of those conservation points, which are so valuable. The other value of placing on that is when you place off these cubes, you get a benefit. In some cases, an immediate benefit. Here, just 2 reputation, 12 money, or 3 of the power tokens. In some cases, an ongoing benefit. So you get it immediately, first this benefit, and then anytime there's a break, you get that. So if I had this one here, if I took this cube and placed it on the conservation project, I'd first get a conservation point. Then every break, I would also get a conservation point, and that goes with any of them. Snapping a card, placing a 2 space for free, getting 5 money. So these are great for early game, but if you're contributing at the end of a project where there's probably not any more breaks, you probably want to do one of these because it gives you an immediate benefit that's more valuable. finally, if you've upgraded your association card, you can do a contribution here, or you place a cube, not one of these cubes, but just a random cube on top of one of these spots. You pay that money and you get that conservation point. It's a nice little way to just turn some of that money, especially at the very beginning. Like two money for a conservation point is actually really good, because each one of those takes a lot of work to get. So you might want to, if you can get in there early, you can get some nice conservation points for cheap. Once you do that, though, that cube covers it, and nobody else can get it for 2. They have to get it for 5, and then 7, and then 10, and then eventually you can just get whatever for 12. All right, a couple of things about the tracks. So the conservation track has some benefits as you go along the way. So first, when you pass 2 on the conservation track, you get to do one of 2 things. You can either upgrade one of your action cards. So there are a few places you can do this if you notice. You can do it here, you can do it here, here, and here. There's only 4 places, so you can't upgrade all your actions. You can upgrade up to 4, or you can unlock another one of your worker here. And if you choose that one, then you wouldn't be able to get the other, and you'd only be able to upgrade 3 of your actions. So typically you're going to want to upgrade those actions, especially early in the game if you can get those, because that makes these so much more valuable to take. Then you're going to have there on the 5 spot and the 8 spot, there are 4 random benefits that will come out, and these are one time. Whoever gets them first gets them, and then whoever's left gets to pick whatever is left. So if I got here first, I could pick either this ×2 multiplier, which lets me take an action multiple times, so 2 times, or getting a free 3 space. If I took one of those, then nobody else could take it. And then the next person takes the other one, then nobody else could take that, and the final person would have to take this 5 money in the middle. Same with here, getting a free partnership, drawing 3 cards, or getting 5. Once somebody gets to 10, then everybody has a choice to make. So at the beginning, after you've chosen the 4 cards you want to keep, you also get 2 scoring cards. Now both of these are end-game scoring cards, and you may not know which one you're going to go for at the beginning of the game, so it lets you wait until somebody passes this 10 mark, and then lets you choose which one you want to keep, and then everybody throws one away. And then the game continues. So it gives you a bit of understanding of, oh, I'm going for more water this time, or I'm going for more mountains, or whatever those 2 might be. All right. Now that's all of the actions you can take. If you don't want to take any of those actions, you can move one of your cards down to the 1 level and just get a power token. It's pretty rare that you would ever want to do that, but if you just don't have anything you can do, that is always an option. And then if you have those power tokens, at least in this interface, you basically just add them here, and it increases the level count for all of them. Notice this one I can't do because it says play 0 animals, right? And so that it doesn't even give me the option, but it gives me those 5 options. So let's look at some example. So I am first in this game. I'm going to choose the build action at level 4, and here it gives me all the options that I can do with a level 1 build card. I can build a kiosk, a pavilion. Actually, I can't build a kiosk because there's no spot that's at least 3 away from that. That's why that one's grayed out. A 1, 2, 3, or 4 spot, or the petting zoo, because that's a 3 spot. I choose to build a 4. I stick it here, but rotated. That 4 moves to the 1 spot, and everything else moves up. And that's my turn. Some turns are going to be pretty quick like that. Other turns are going to trigger other things and be more complicated. So let's look at something like that. All right, so here is an example of a more complicated turn. So I'm not too much farther in the game. I did a sponsorship or an association action here, and got the Asia partnership token, and got some new cards. Now I'm going to do the build action. It's the same as before, but this one's going to do a little bit different. So I'm going to... Oh, sorry, that must be the... Aha, okay, so I remember doing this, but I did it in a little bit roundabout way. So I decided to play this peacock action because it let me do some building that I wanted to do, which would trigger a few things. So I placed the peacock. I had a discount because I have the Asia partnership, so that went down to 15. I put it in the 3 spot here, and the posturing here lets me up to 2 times place a kiosk or pavilion. I place a pavilion on top of this spot here, which lets me pull a card from the action set here. That one, the one I wanted here, was the polar bear, and then I'm able to place one more, and so I place another kiosk over here, which then gets me a token there, and that's my turn. But what this does is it leads me to my next turn, where I get to, with this sponsorship at 5, plan to play this polar bear exhibit. So let's look at what that looks like. All right, so it's my turn again. I'm going to play the sponsorship at level 5, so I can play this card. This card lets me first place a unique building, also gains me 2 appeal because I'm placing a bear. This bear is included in that ongoing every time a bear is played. And so I decide to take this unique building. Gives you a little interface here where you can place something and then rotate it and so on and so forth. I place it right here. It has to be next to water, and then it covers that icon as well. And I actually placed it over here because I think I wanted to get over to this extra worker here, so I can open that up quickly. And lets me draw a card either from my reputation range or from the deck. I chose from the deck, got a new card here, and now I have that out. So you can see here, and some of them even get more complicated as you cover things up and trigger other things, as you get things that you're able to do that trigger other powers here. You can see how they can coincide, and you can plan ahead. The nice thing about it is there's not too much taking each other's spot, because you all have your own zoo. Certainly somebody could take a card that you want, but other than that, there's not, or maybe they take a specific partnership token. But again, these refill every time there's a break action. So I forgot to mention, during the break action, the other thing that happens is you get money based on how far you are up on the appeal track. So you see this number up here. I'm at 12 right now, and so anytime there's a break, I would get 12 money. So that is another reason to do that break. This continues on, and you continue to take actions and continue to fill your zoo until those 2 tracks coincide for somebody. In this case, it was me, but it doesn't matter who. And then the game ends by everybody else getting one more turn. I'm not going to go much farther than that. I've shown you everything. I should mention some of these cards have, well, this one's actually preventative, but some cards have kind of things that affect other players negatively, like where you get, in this game, somebody put venom tokens on actions where unless you take that action, you have to pay 2 money every action that you take. And those types of things will come off anytime there's a break. Those are reset. So they're just slight inconveniences that exist in the game. It's maybe 10 or 12 cards in the entire game. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the BGA interface, because this looks a lot different than the board in the actual game. And they do a lot of things to help make things more convenient and give you some customization options. Just looking at the board here, for example, this track, you can see as people move up. Once everybody moves up, I think this thing disappears. But if you ever want to see the full thing, while people are still on this lower side, you can look at the entire thing here, or you can always click this button right here, and that will show you the entire track. These are where those cards are placed. They're usually full cards, but they kind of minimize them down to the spots that you have. Anytime you hover over a card, we talked about how it shows those requirements that it gives you. It doesn't really explain what the any more detail on the benefit of the card, But you should be able to understand what each of them mean after you get the basics of the rules. And the sponsorship cards, it definitely does explain what all of those things do as you get that. And just make sure you understand what things are called. A conservation project is these green things. A sponsorship action is a blue card. An association action is one of these blue actions over here, that type of thing. Conservation track versus the appeal track. Understanding those. If you understand those, you're going to be fine. If you want to see other players' boards, you can use these two arrows here and see what other people are doing, where they are on their own boards as well. You don't get to see their cards, but you get to see their boards, what things they have placed in their boards. For instance, this opponent has placed a special monkey house that they were able to use with a sponsorship card, this Reese's Monkey Park. At the end of the game, you, like we said, can get points from these cards here, and there's an easy way to switch between your cards and your final scoring cards, but you can also just minimize this and look at it through that way if you want more space over here. And then the sideboard gives you lots of information about you and all the others. It shows you the order of your cards, and if any of them are upgraded, these will be like purple. It shows you your values, your money, how many power tokens, your reputation, your conservation, appeal, the number of cards that you have. And this one says, you know, I have that +2 whenever there's a break, so I only have to go down to 5. This shows you all of your tags that you have anywhere, so you can count those. If you are like, I need to get five Africa tags, well, look, I have 0 Africa tags. Again, I don't have any, but Drakenji here has 2. And so you can see all of your tags, and you can see all of everybody else's tags and orders, and so it's a nice quick glance at everything that you have. All right, let's talk about some customization options. Okay, the first item for you to note, and this is especially if you dare to play this on a mobile interface or a touch interface, you can still do that. And this option here lets you, instead of having the hover over everything, it puts question marks over everything that you can click or touch and to get the information, so that it doesn't automatically hover stuff, but you have to actually click on it or tap it. So that might be useful if you are on that mobile interface or just only want to look at things when you need help with them, though it adds all these icons that kind of create a lot of headaches. So I would recommend it only if you're doing it on the mobile interface. And then in the settings here, these are mostly settings for the layout. What do things look like? So this, we have the individual view, but you can change it to see the multiple view, so they're one below each other. You could do, instead of the 2 columns, just a single column that's very big, and you know, if you really need to have it expanded, maybe again if you're on mobile, there's different scales that you can use, various ways that you can display different things. Same idea with the player panels where the icons are. This one's a little different, so we're showing the step counter going up from 12. In the actual game, the break counter kind of goes down from that number, and that number does change with player count. So you could say it show like how far along it is, or show how much is remaining. It doesn't really matter, but some people might like it in one way or the other. Game flow, this is basically saying, do you want to have the ability to undo turns? Do you want it to confirm turns? I would encourage all of these enabled, especially BGA, that you're not accidentally doing something that you can't undo. It'll even give you warnings when you're drawing cards, because when you draw a card, you obviously can't undo that because you've seen the card already. And so it gives you various options to do there. And then, again, some helpful things like showing the reduced costs automatically, giving you a way to sort by drag and drop, and a few things, displaying borders and so on and so forth. So a lot of visual stuff and some helps that BGA does to make things go smoother and remind you what you're able to do, and making sure you're staying within all of those limits. That is a quick summary of Board Game Arena. Not very quick, but it hopefully will give you a sense of how to play the game and how to play it in how to play Ark Nova, not Board Game Arena, how to play Ark Nova in the Board Game Arena interface. Hope this was helpful. Thanks.